Welcome to True Tomorrows. I'm Adrian Smith, and wow, I'm excited for another wild future story.
And I'm Julia Jones. I'll be here to help sort out the science fact from the science fiction.
You know, we're all about how tech is changing the world, but sometimes it feels like we're living in a movie.
You got that right. Today's story is a real head-scratcher. Makes you wonder, where's the line between helpful technology and something a little more unnerving?
So if you're into the strange side of tech and what might be lurking just around the corner, well, you've come to the right place.
This show is your guide to navigating the exciting and sometimes unsettling world of tomorrow.
Definitely. And if you like what you hear, hit that rate button and follow True Tomorrows for more cool stories delivered fresh every day.
All right, buckle up, because today we're asking you to imagine a world where making life easier actually makes us weaker.
Whoa! Have you ever thought about how much we depend on technology, even for the simplest things?
It's true. We've got smartphones that remember appointments GPS that tells us where to go, algorithms that pick our news for us.
Yeah, we're giving more and more of our daily tasks to technology because it's convenient and efficient.
But what happens when that convenience starts to, erode our own abilities?
Yeah, that's where the convenience trap comes in, I think.
Right. The source material highlights a study that found a correlation between increased reliance on GPS and a decline in spatial reasoning skills.
So people who always use GPS, they might be getting worse at navigating on their own.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding our way around. The article talks about how depending too much on spell check and grammar tools might be impacting our writing skills.
It's like our brains are getting lazy because technology is doing all the hard work.
And the concern is that this could have a ripple effect, impact not just our individual capabilities, but society as a whole.
So what if this dependence keeps growing? What happens if technology gets so good at doing things for us that we forget how to do them ourselves?
And what happens if the technology fails?
That's a chilling thought. We could become so reliant on technology that we're basically helpless without it.
It's like that scene in Wall-E where humans have become so pampered by technology that they can't even walk on their own.
Yeah, a bit dramatic maybe, but it illustrates the point.
The source material argues that we need to find a balance, between embracing the benefits of technology and maintaining our own cognitive skills.
So how do we strike that balance? I mean, technology is only going to get more advanced, right?
Absolutely. But that doesn't mean we have to surrender to it completely. The article suggests that we need to be more mindful of how we use technology.
So instead of always using GPS, maybe try using a map every now and then to keep those spatial reasoning skills sharp.
Exactly. Or instead of letting spell check do all the work, we can try to proofread our own writing.
It's about being proactive, making sure we're not just passively consuming technology, but actively engaging with it in a way that keeps our minds sharp.
The key takeaway here is that convenience shouldn't come at the cost of our own abilities. We need to use technology as a tool to enhance our lives, not to replace our own skills and independence.
It's about finding that sweet spot where technology empowers us without making us weaker.
And that's a conversation worth having as we continue to navigate this ever-evolving technological landscape.
Well said. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the good enough dilemma mentioned in the article. You know how we're constantly striving for better, faster, more efficient technology?
It's the nature of progress, right? Always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But that pursuit of better can sometimes lead us down a slippery slope.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
The good enough dilemma basically argues that as technology gets better and better at mimicking human capabilities, we might start to settle for good enough solutions, even if they're not perfect or even ideal.
Give me an example.
Think about AI-generated art. The technology has advanced so rapidly in recent years that some AI-generated pieces are practically indistinguishable from human-created art.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen some AI-generated images that are absolutely stunning.
But here's the dilemma. If we become so accustomed to AI-generated art that's good enough, will we stop valuing the unique creativity and skill of human artists?
Will we be content with AI churning out endless variations on a theme rather than pushing the boundaries of artistic expression?
That's a really thought-provoking point. It's like if we're satisfied with good enough, we might stifle true innovation and creativity.
And it goes beyond art. Think about music literature, even scientific research.
So what's the solution here? How do we embrace technological advancement without settling for mediocrity?
Well, the article doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does encourage us to be more discerning consumers of technology.
Meaning we shouldn't just accept something because it's new or flashy.
Right. We should critically evaluate whether it truly adds value to our lives or if it's just a good enough substitute for something better.
Precisely. And we need to be mindful of the potential consequences of settling for good enough solutions. Are we sacrificing quality for convenience? Are we losing something valuable in the process?
It's about asking those tough questions and making conscious choices about the role we want technology to play in our lives.
It's about finding that balance between embracing the possibilities of technology and preserving the things that make us uniquely human.
You've given me a lot to think about, and I bet our listeners are feeling the same way.
Let those ideas sink in for a minute.
That good enough dilemma really has me thinking.
Yeah, it's one of those ideas that you don't realize is happening until you stop and really look around.
The article had some pretty eye-opening examples like how this mentality is impacting how we consume information.
Oh, that's a good one. Think about how many times you skimmed an article or watched like a quick summary video instead of diving into the full thing.
Oh yeah, guilty as charged. It's so easy to get caught up in all the headlines and sound bites.
And that's the problem. We're getting used to quick information, but are we really understanding it?
Are we getting a surface-level understanding and missing the nuances? That's kind of scary.
And the article argues that this can have real consequences. It mentions a study that found a correlation between reading comprehension skills going down and an increase in social media use.
So the more we're scrolling, the less able we are to engage with complex texts.
That's what the study suggests.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just reading comprehension, it's critical thinking analysis, forming your own opinions.
Those are pretty important skills, especially now.
Absolutely. We need to be able to sift through all the information and figure out what's biased and evaluate different perspectives. But if we're always getting these tiny bits of info, we might not be able to do that anymore.
So how do we fight this good enough mentality when it comes to information? What does the article say?
One of the main things it says is to be more intentional about what information you consume.
So instead of just scrolling through social media, we should actively look for good articles, books, and documentaries.
Exactly. Be more proactive in how you learn and be willing to put in the time and effort to really understand things. Sometimes that means putting the phone down and focusing.
Like the difference between fast food and a good home-cooked meal. They both fill you up, but one's a much better experience.
I love that analogy. It applies to so many things, not just information. Think about your relationships, hobbies, or even your job. Are you settling for good enough there?
That really hits home. It's easy to fall into that trap when everything's about being efficient and productive.
We're told to do more faster, but what are we missing out on? Meaningful relationships, passions, excellence.
These are tough questions, but we need to ask them. What truly matters to us? What kind of life do we want to live? Are we settling?
These are the questions that will guide us as we navigate all of this new technology and try to make sure it's making our lives better without, getting rid of what makes us human.
Beautifully said. And I think this is the perfect time to talk about this digital immortality and the echo of self thing from the article. It ties into this good enough conversation perfectly.
You're right. It's all connected.
Have you ever thought about leaving a digital version of yourself behind after you're gone? Like a digital ghost that can talk to people in the future.
It sounds like sci-fi, but the article says it might be closer than we think.
I mean, now I'm interested.
The article talks about AI and deep learning and how they're getting so good that we might be able to create these digital copies of ourselves that act like us.
Like virtual clones.
Not exactly. The article calls them echoes of self. Like, imagine a digital avatar that knows everything about you, from emails and social media to photos, videos, even what websites you visit.
So like a digital you.
Exactly. And the idea is that this echo could talk to people after you're gone, share your memories, your thoughts, even give advice.
Well, that's cool and creepy at the same time. It'd be like talking to a ghost of yourself.
And that's where that good enough dilemma pops up again. If we can make these echoes that are good enough to fool people into thinking they're talking to the real you, will we forget about real human connection?
Will we be so used to talking to digital ghosts that we forget about enjoying time with people who are alive?
It brings up some big questions. What happens if we make these echoes? Who owns the rights to them? How do we make sure they're used for good?
We have to start asking those questions now before this tech is everywhere, because it might be too late to stop it once it's out there.
Exactly. That's why it's important to talk about it. We have to know what could happen with new tech and decide how we want to use it.
It's about shaping the future we want instead of just reacting to what's happening.
And that's something we all have to do.
This has been a wild ride exploring the good enough dilemma and how it might be affecting our lives. That was a wild ride, right? Exploring this idea that making life easier could be making us weaker, and how this good enough idea is changing how we learn and even how we think about death.
Yeah, it's amazing how it all connects.
Right.
Right. All these different ideas really show how complicated our relationship with tech is and how it's changing the world.
Totally. And for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all this, well, that's totally normal. This is deep stuff.
It really is, which is why it's so important to talk about it, bring it out into the open and think critically about how technology is affecting our lives.
I agree. So as we wrap up this episode of True Tomorrows, I want to leave you with a few things to think about.
Sounds good. What are you thinking?
Well, first, I think it's important to remember that technology is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It all depends on us.
That's a great way to put it. We're the ones in control.
Exactly. Which leads to my second point. We need to be aware of the downsides of convenience. Just because something makes life easier doesn't mean it's good for us in the long run.
Right. We need to question things, make sure we're not losing important skills or experiences just to make things easier.
And last but not least, we're not just watching this happen. We have a say in what the future looks like.
Every choice we make about technology, every app we download, every product we buy, all of it adds up.
So let's be thoughtful, let's be critical, and let's make sure we're using technology to create a future that's good for everyone.
I like that. A reminder that we have power in this digital world.
For sure. So with that in mind, it's time to wrap up this episode of True Tomorrows. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of tomorrow. It's a strange place sometimes, but always fascinating.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep imagining what could be.
Because we decide what the future looks like.